Which way do you swing? That's a bit of a personal question. Anyway, we'll be talking about why you should be putting lube on your shafts. Those who've seen my older practice videos will notice that I've got a habit of swinging outward. So my bow arm moves to the left and my bow swings behind my legs. These days you would notice that my bow swings more conventionally, as you might say, where the bow finishes to my right in front of me and it swings forward in front of my legs. And you might be asking, well, why has this changed? How has it changed? And is it something which everyone needs to do? I want to preface this by reminding everybody that the swing that you see isn't really a swing, it's a follow through. And you can't force a follow through. The follow through is the result of the process that comes before it. So the direction and manner in which the bow drops from your hand is going to depend on what you did prior to that point. Don't try to intentionally swing the bow left or swing the bow right. That actually defeats the purpose. It may lead to other form faults, and it really isn't the point of the whole bow drop and follow through. Nonetheless, because it is such a visually striking part of the shot process and we have that picture perfect finish, which a lot of archers want to replicate, it's important to dissect what goes on to create that follow through that you might want. Now, at first glance, it might be a preference. Some people will swing out, some people will swing in. In reflecting on my form changes over the last month or so, I can in fact tell you what is likely to cause an outswing versus an inswing and what it can reflect. The follow-through direction is actually based on a couple of things. The first and probably the most important one is how you grip the bow, and the second one is how you expand or apply back tension. And normally when you develop new form, it's hard to replicate old form faults, but I'm pretty sure I can recreate what I did to create the outswing, which I used to have. So let's have a go at this. Yep. Okay, I can definitely do that. Yep, okay, that's very familiar to me. And for contrast, yep, also feels natural to me now. So what's happening with my outside follow through is the result of how I was trained to begin with. I was taught mostly in a more classical push-pull manner, and there are certain parts of my form which don't match push-pull but weren't picked up on by my coach at the time. So the first thing which I did when I was starting archery and had that follow through was that my grip was a high grip. So when we talk about high and low grip, a high grip is closer to the top of the bow grip, so the pivot point, whereas a low grip is a bit lower down towards the pressure point. So initially, I was told to put my hand quite deep in the grip, and I naturally adopted a high grip. Because of my high grip, I had a tendency to push forward with my hand and thumb, so it got really high in the pivot point. Now, there are problems with the high grip. There's a reason why I think most sources and coaches will recommend a low grip, but the high grip has the problem of not having the consistency. You tend to heel the bow sometimes. There's a bit more left and right inconsistency, but that was what I was using at the time. The other thing which was drilled into me in my earlier days was that because we are doing the push and pull, then because of the motion of expansion, of the chest opening outwards and the back shoulder squeezing in, then it's only natural for the arm to finish left. And that's taught in many coaching manuals. So on expansion and release, the arm should be finishing left and low for a right-handed shooter. So we combine the high grip with the training to let the arm go left and low, then you tend to end up with that follow through, which is what you would see in most of my old videos. And again, it's important to point out that this isn't necessarily wrong or bad. Many people do follow through to the left. Some people let the bow hit their leg. So it's quite common, even with competitive shooters, to have a slightly different follow through in that manner. That's likely why it happens. Again, you can shoot well with that. Might not be the most optimal way, but people can make it work. So So the primary change I've experienced is that I've changed the positioning of my grip, hence why my bow drop happens more conventionally like most archers have. And this is the same whether you're doing a classical push-pull, whether you're doing KSL or angler draw. It's mostly the pressure you put on the grip. So before I had the high grip and I had the tendency to move outwards, hence why when I drop the bow, it would go that way. Now, with the conventional follow through, which most people will do, this is mostly a matter of your bow grip. So what I now pay attention to is using a low grip. So I put more pressure on the lower part of the grip, that's the pressure point. So the base of my thumb, the meaty part here, is going to push down quite heavily on that bottom part of the grip. So to get my bow grip right, I'm going to put my meaty part of the thumb on that pressure point and squeeze the thumb gently. And to keep my hand in the low position, I'm going to make sure my knuckles on my left hand are 45 degrees to the ground, and I'll be pulling back on the pinky. What this accomplishes is that instead of thrusting forward with a high grip, I'm using a low grip. So by pulling the fingers back and having the thumb pressure on that pressure point, it keeps my hand in the correct, consistent low grip. So with a high grip, I'm very high on the pivot point, I'm choking it, I'm pushing it forward. Whereas with the low grip, I'm allowing the thumb to sit on the pressure point, squeezing it and pulling the fingers back and the knuckles at 45 degrees. So by doing that, I have much better bone-on-bone alignment. That change in having a low bow grip, especially having the correct pressure point, is likely to drop the bow on the inside compared to the outside. The other thing which can affect the follow through is how much you relax on the release. If you don't maintain back tension and you release, you're more likely to collapse inwards, or with the arm relaxed, you tend to flop outwards. If you are executing back tension correctly, especially in ensuring that your front arm is pushing forward on that pressure point, then the bow will follow the direction of your expansion. So because we're expanding that way, then as I push forward, the bow will drop that way. So remember, process is paramount. Don't force the follow through, follow the process. The bow drop will indicate what you've done before that. So that's the basic idea of why the follow through looks the way it does. Like I said before, don't intentionally try to throw your hand or arm one way or the other. You're not artificially creating the follow through. You have to be following your process. So if your process results in you swinging one way, you might want to evaluate whether you're doing it correctly, whether you're doing it consistently. Like I said, even though I've been doing the outswing for years, having my form change and learning the right pressure point and expansion motion basically got me to swing this way automatically. Honestly, I'm one of those people who are always puzzled over how people could achieve that follow through, and just through understanding the process and applying it, that's what naturally happened. I didn't have to force it at all. The best tip I recommend, at least starting out, is just let your wrist roll with the motion. Because you're shooting this way and you're pushing forward this way with your front arm when you're expanding, just let the weight of the bow carry the wrist downwards. Don't try to throw your hand outwards. Now, you will see some archers have a much more explosive and dynamic release and follow through. That's a bit more advanced. You probably want to have a bit more confidence in your basic form first before you start throwing the thing around. And there is a purpose to it, especially if you watch people like the Americans and the Koreans. They've got a much more rapid follow through. But for those starting out, that's the reason why this follow through happens. Pay attention to your bow grip and your expansion. Another thing people pointed out is, am I now squeezing the bow grip? No, I'm not. So before, it was more obviously open, so you can see the bow jump out of the hand. However, Even though I am putting more pressure on the grip and squeezing it down here, I'm not wrapping my fingers around the grip or using my index finger or anything else. So, should I correctly do this, what should happen is if I don't have the sling, I would still have the bow go forward and go down. This is a coaching drill. You remove the finger sling, you make the archer execute a shot or a mock shot and let the bow drop, and the coach will catch it. Anyway, I know this probably isn't the most important part of the shot process, but a lot of people are captivated by this particular motion and why it happens. And I know some people, including myself, had a lot of trouble figuring it out how to make it happen. Like I said, don't try to make it happen. Learn the proper process first and you will get this result. If you don't get this result, then it may reveal things you might need to work on. Anyway, I hope you found this interesting and helpful. This is NUSensei. Thank you for watching. Hopefully, I'll see you next time.